Now, when I first started my video production journey, one of the first pieces of gear that I got to help me move the camera better was a slider. I spent roughly around $500 and it sucked. It was absolutely terrible. However, today, the products in the budget realm of sliders have gotten so good that honestly, if you are looking for a slider, you don't have to spend a lot of money. And so today we're gonna be taking a look at this guy. This is the Toprig Accsoon S40. And for an inexpensive slider, it's pretty dang good. Now, because this is considered a budget slider, there are tons of things that when you look at it, you're going to not expect this thing to have, but it absolutely does. And it's kind of crazy that they packed all this in at such an inexpensive price. For starters, this is a motorized slider, which means that it can actually repeat movements on its own and even loop between an A and B point that you can set on the slider itself. The thing I like probably the most about the slider is just how simple it is to use. All of the controls are on the right side of the slider, and you don't actually have to use like an app or anything like that in order to dial in this slider the way you want to. On the right side of the slider is where you're gonna find the power supply. So all it needs is a Sony NP battery, and then you're good to go. The one thing I did find with this is how crazy long the battery life. I was using fairly one of the bigger Sony NP batteries, and I never was able to get the dial to drop below 100%, and I was shooting for hours. Now, below the power button, you have your A and B point markers. And so literally all you do is you just hit the play button here, which will make the slider start moving. Once you get it to a spot that you want to be your A point, you click this button once, you'll see that the A will light up. Then you continue to press play, so that way it'll continue to move to the secondary point. Once you get there, you press it again to pause it, click B, and your A and B points are now set. Underneath that is where you can control if you want it to just slide once or loop. And literally, this is as simple as pressing the button once. You'll see a little arrow with a 1, that means it's gonna do the movement once. And then if you press it again, it'll just continue to loop that movement. And then, of course, below that is the button I've been talking about. This is your pause and play button, and that just kind of moves the slider. As far as I'm concerned, that's really all you have to know. You do have a speed dial up here. The one thing about this speed dial is there's no time markers on it whatsoever, but what I did find is that at the slowest speed, it'll take roughly about 3 minutes in order for it to travel from one end to the other. Now, before I jump into the next feature on this slider, I do want to invite you guys to join us this Friday. We will be doing a live stream at 11 o'clock Central Standard Time here on this YouTube channel. We'll be talking about business, video production, and how you actually go about growing your business. And we'll be doing the entire thing live. So hopefully I'll see you guys there this Friday. A couple other quick cool features on here is that this thing does have a leveler, which is fantastic, especially if you're gonna be putting this on a tripod that has a ball head. But if you're putting it on the ground and it's not quite a level surface, the bottom actually has feet, and these feet can be unscrewed, and you can completely take them out if you want to. But the way I like to actually use them is I'll actually unscrew them and get them to a leveling point, especially when I'm putting this down on a flat surface. Now, most expensive sliders actually have a motorized head, which will allow you to be able to do some pans while your slider is actually moving. However, this guy doesn't have that because it's in that affordable price point. However, it does have a way for you to still be able to execute some pans in order to create some parallax in your sliding shot. So there's actually 2 little knobs, and there's some markers on the right side, so that way if you wanted to like dial in the exact same slide every single time, you could absolutely do that. But the nice thing here is that you can just unscrew those and then slide it up and down, and this actually creates an angular difference that will force the camera to actually do a pan while it is sliding. Now, there are tons of reasons of why you'd want to use a motorized slider. One is one of my favorites, and that is a time lapse. Personally, I think time lapses are absolutely amazing ways to show the passage of time, or just to kind of spice up an edit. But if you can get your time lapse on a motorized slider, that extra bit of motion just really helps set your time lapse apart from every other time lapse out there. Also, because this is actually a pretty powerful slider, you can actually even use this to not only just do slides from left to right, but you can even use it to move up and down. Now, granted, you will need a ball head attached to this in order to do that. And the nice thing is that this actually has a specialized 3/8 and 1/4 20 thread. So the 3/8 here just slides down. So if you are trying to put a certain ball head that doesn't have 3/8, it can just kind of go down and get out of your way, which is really nice. Now, speaking of being able to utilize this in multiple situations, the one thing that I do love is that on the bottom of it, there are so many different thread points. And the benefit of having all these different threaded points is that it literally can be mounted to anything, whether that's a tripod, a light stand, a quick release plate that then you attach to a tripod, so that way you can pull off that vertical shot like I was talking about earlier. There are so many different ways to mount this to whatever system that you want, so that way you can have a secure slider, so that way you can make sure your shots come out nice and smooth. Now, full transparency, the S40 is not the longest slider. In fact, it's actually a super compact slider, which could be great, especially for travel. It travels roughly about 8.9 inches, is at least what it says online. But what I found that is something that you want to definitely keep in mind when it comes to this slider is the fact that you are going to need some type of foreground element in order to get that parallax look that you're going for. If you don't have that foreground element, because it's such a short slide, no pun intended, you're not going to really be able to tell that motion. Longer sliders typically can cover longer distances, so that parallax motion actually is easier to pick up. Now, if you do find yourself thinking that, okay, the 8.9 inches maybe isn't enough of a distance, Accsoon does actually have a longer slider as well, which you can also pick up. Now, I did mention earlier that this device does not need an actual app in order to operate it, which is probably one of my favorite features, but it is good to know that there is a Bluetooth app that you can connect to this device, and that will give you some more control of it for things like time lapses, speed, and things like that. So if you are interested in using an app, you can absolutely download that and take a little bit more advantage of what this slider can do. So if you happen to be in the market for a small compact slider and you want a way just to kind of spice up a couple extra shots in your videos, then I do strongly recommend picking up this guy. Yes, there are a few quirks because it is a less expensive model. However, that said, I do think that it is still a solid built product and something that I think would be great for anybody's kit who uses sliders on a regular basis. But that's just my opinion on this little guy. If you are in the market and you do need a small compact slider, I do think that this is probably one of the better ones I've gotten a chance to check out, especially at this price point. But if you are interested in checking it out for yourself, of course, I'll have links down below in the description for you to check out. Also, thank you so much to Accsoon for sponsoring this video and sending this guy out, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.